Fred tries his luck, and then Antony! For Manchester United! They've turned it round!
He has made 100 appearances in 100 matches. He has never lost a match that he has won. Look at his skills. This man literally screams aura. Antony is right now the biggest meme in football, and it's not even close. Nobody takes this guy seriously. But just 2 years ago, he was considered as one of the biggest young talents in football. Manchester United paid almost $100 million to have him in their squad. Now, more than 2 years have passed and he is still in their squad, but they are barely playing him at all. So how did he go from the biggest young prospect to arguably the biggest flop in the Premier League history? Stay tuned, because his story is much more interesting than you think, and I can promise you, this video will change the way you think about Antony. So first of all, he grew up in hell. No, that's not an exaggeration. The favela where he grew up was called Inferninho, which literally means little hell. Just a couple of steps outside his house, he would regularly see drug dealing, gun violence, or police raids. And although his parents worked really hard, doing everything they possibly could to keep Antony away from the ugly truth, eventually he noticed the dark side of reality at a very young age. Once, he even had to jump over a dead body on his way to school. Yet, in these horrible conditions, he has managed to find his one true passion, and that was football. With no money to buy boots, he had to play barefoot and his feet were bleeding all the time, but he didn't care. It was not only the place where he could escape from the horror of everyday life, it was also the place where the little boy found confidence to show what he is capable of in front of the gangsters. As he said himself, "I would elastico the drug dealers, rainbow flick the bus drivers, nutmeg the thieves. I really did not give a f***. With the ball at my feet, I had no fear." He had only one dream. He wanted to become a professional footballer, to move his family away from the hell. There was no plan B. He was either going to do it or die trying. And well, his start was promising. When he was 14, he got his first chance at Sao Paulo Academy. But if you thought it was smooth sailing, you couldn't have been more wrong. Every day, he would train after school with an empty stomach, simply because he couldn't afford to eat. And what's more, he barely even played. He was never considered as a prodigy and was nearly kicked out of the academy 3 times. Despite that, after years of hard work and determination to prove everyone wrong, when he turned 16, he made the biggest progress he had ever done. And by the time he was 18, he was playing for the first team. In the summer of 2018, he was ready to spend the preseason in the USA and then take another step forward to become a permanent first team player, only to be told he would be sent back to the under-20s. To say he was disappointed would be an understatement, but if he had learned one thing from his childhood, it was to never give up. By February, he would not only be the regular starter for the first team, he would be the hero. His speed, flair, and fearlessness helped Sao Paulo reach the final of Paulista Championship, where he even scored. At the time, he was still living in the favela, and after the final, a journalist had noticed him and asked what he was doing there. He answered, "Brother, I live here." And yet, when he thought he had finally proved himself at the top level, he was met with yet another series of setbacks and challenges that tested his character even more, because after that final, he wouldn't score for over 4 months. He went from being loved to being booed. He looked hopeless. He was missing clear chances, losing the ball. He was raw, predictable, and his decision-making looked questionable at best. However, after all the years of hard work, he was never going to quit. He persuaded the goalkeeper to stay late after every single training session to work on his finishing. Every shot he missed only fueled the fire in him, and that work would soon pay off, because once he has ended his goalless drought, he wouldn't stop scoring. With his newfound form, he was excited for the next season with Sao Paulo. He was ready to secure his status as one of the most dangerous players in Brazil. But as it always goes, there is simply nothing in this guy's career that goes according to his plans. Just a few matches into the new season, COVID COVID struck. He never played for Sao Paulo again. And here comes the most important moment of his life. He was finally able to achieve his only dream, the one he was dreaming about since he was jumping over dead bodies on his way to school as a little kid. He bought his family a new house away from hell. In his own words, Champions League, the World Cup, Ballon d'Or, those are not dreams, those are goals. My only dream was to take my parents out of the favela. Well, it's impossible to say he has lost all motivation, but when a 20-year-old guy has achieved everything he ever dreamed of, you would probably think he wouldn't have the same fire in his eyes. Luckily, after his transfer to Europe, he has found a man who, despite the doubts about his consistency and tactical awareness, saw a huge potential in him and truly believed he could become the next big thing. And that man was none other than Erik ten Hag. Yeah, I know how funny this sounds now, but in his first 15 appearances for Ajax under ten Hag, he got 7 goals and 8 assists, only to score just 2 goals in the second half of the season. But he was much more consistent in the next season, as he would not only shine in Eredivisie, but also in the Champions League. By March, he was a serious contender for the Player of the Year in Netherlands. But in the span of just 2 weeks, everything fell apart. Firstly, Ajax was unexpectedly eliminated from the Champions League by Benfica. Then, he got a red card against Feyenoord for faking an injury, and 10 days later, in a World Cup qualification match against Bolivia, he went down again, but this time, he wasn't faking anything. His season was over, but despite the fact he hasn't ended that season the way he would have imagined, in his 2 years at Ajax, he has shown that he is capable of performing at the top level. And since he was still very young and had so much potential to improve, many big clubs were after him. However, Ajax was reluctant to sell him and rejected every offer they got. Except that Antony really wanted to move, and he wanted it so much that he literally went on a strike, not playing or even training until Ajax would accept the transfer bid. And eventually, it would be Man United that would agree to pay almost $100 million for his transfer. Okay, you might have forgotten, but Antony's start at Old Trafford was absolutely incredible. In his debut against Arsenal, he scored just after 35 minutes. Then he scored an absolute banger in a derby against Man City, and 1 week later he scored again in a match against Everton. He became the first player ever to score in his first 3 matches for Manchester United. But since then, he has not only stopped scoring, as he scored only twice in his next 55 Premier League appearances, but his performances were just beyond awful. And if the problems he had on the pitch weren't enough, he also made sure to get into the trouble when he was off the field, as he faced allegations for sexual assault by 3 women. One of them even said he threatened to throw her out of a speeding car. And while Antony denied all the allegations and nothing has been proven yet, well, controversies like this doesn't help him at all. Don't get me wrong, Antony fully deserves the criticism he's getting, and Man United fans have all the right in the world to be frustrated with him. When you splash $100 million for a player, you would expect to get at least 100 million times more than a fidget spinner. But on the other hand, players are just people. People with different personalities, different characters, different backgrounds, different past. While some of them want to achieve everything that is there to achieve, some of them just want to have a decent life and provide for their family. And while we can't say with certainty that Antony falls into the second category, he wouldn't be the first nor the last one. Players like Oscar or Dele Alli grew up in huge poverty and misery, and once they reached a certain point in their careers, they just had no motivation left to continue pushing themselves at the top level. Is Antony one of those players? Or can he somehow find a way to restart his career? Let me know what do you think in the comments, and please like and subscribe. It would mean everything for me.